It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Colorado 0 for 3 on third down. Let's see what the Utes do here. See if they can hold Colorado. Again, Shedeur Sanders just loves to run around and hold on to that ball.
He tries to find the play and make the big play. And then here the flag is thrown.
On Zamaya Vaughn.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to go against Utah.
My guy Jake Scott, of course, I produce Jake and Ben Monday through Friday. Jake Scott has a good point. He thinks that Shedeur hangs onto the ball so much because he's afraid of throwing picks. Throwing interceptions would, of course, hurt his draft stock. It would be better to take a sack than throw an interception.
I agree. That's a good take.
Could be.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good take.
Could be.
The sacks look better than the INTs for sure on the stat sheet for sure.
Right. But the other problem is, I mean, it's not like scouts aren't watching the film,
Yes.
right? So holding on to the football is going to be a big ding, especially because the defensive linemen in the NFL are just so much faster. And, you know, if Shedeur has trouble right now, I can't imagine it's going to be any easier.
Are we going with Shedeur and Travis going 1 and 2 interchangeable then
No.
in the draft?
No, I don't think so.
You don't buy that stock?
I don't think Shedeur is good enough to go top 5, but I don't know. It's kind of a weak draft offensively. I mean, you've got some stars, like Ashton Ginty is really good, but he's a running back. Teams might be kind of weary of taking him really high. I'm not a scout, obviously. I've seen people who do watch draft film kind of talk about Shedeur lacks any elite traits as a quarterback. He doesn't really have any negatives other than maybe holding on to the ball too long and then maybe leadership. You can say what you want, but as far as like his arm strength and his speed and athleticism, he's not really elite in anything, which you typically see the top quarterbacks in any draft class. They have something that they do better than everybody else, and Shedeur just doesn't have that. But he could have a high floor.
I think I'm not sure if I buy the 1 and 2 overall.
No. They'll both be first-round picks, though, for sure.
Yes, they will be first-round picks, and I'll even say that Shedeur is the first quarterback.
Cam Ward might be taken before Shedeur.
I think he'll definitely be 1 or 2 quarterback for sure, though.
Yeah, I think that's pretty certain. We'll see if there's rumors about Dion kind of stepping in and making sure that both of these guys.
He'll privately have conversations with the NFL.
Yeah. Privately. Or
whatever that means.
How about this? Maybe Dion will be the Dallas Cowboys' next head coach, and he will personally select Shedeur Sanders. Top 10. That's my theory.
Cowboys going with the tank?
Dark horse. Not by choice, but they're awful this year, and Dak Prescott is out for the rest of the season with a hamstring injury. Let's talk BYU. We'll talk more of this game later as Colorado just punted away to the Utes. Still 14-3, so the game is not quite over. Utah still has the opportunity. But earlier, Alex, we talked about BYU and their hopes for a Big 12 title game. Everything looking good so far for the Cougs. They are rolling 9-0. They welcome Kansas tonight. Night game in Provo. Interesting matchup because Kansas does not have the best record. They're 3-6, but 5 of those 6 losses were by 4 or less points, so they play in a lot of close games. The Cougars are 3-0 in their one-score games, so it's a dangerous game to play for BYU. But I do like their chances tonight.
The chances for Kansas or for BYU?
No, for BYU,
gotcha.
sorry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you because, one, it's at home.
Right.
And I don't think I'll ever pick against BYU when they're at Lavelle Edwards.
No, especially for the night games.
Especially for the night games. The Vampire Cougs. I like their chances at home. They've been very good at home. That crowd is incredible. Kansas, though, have looked better in the last couple of weeks.
They have. They beat Iowa State.
Which, Iowa State's, they got a good defense, man. They have a good defense, and, you know, Kansas has kind of struggled a little bit on the offensive side of the ball, but for them to be able to walk away with the win against Iowa State, I think that's huge for the confidence of Kansas. I think that's huge for the confidence of Jalen Daniels. And so we'll see what Kansas team shows up to Lavelle Edwards tonight.
I think BYU matches up against Kansas. I don't think Iowa State really does. Matches up well. I guess I got to put that word in there. Jalen Daniels has 9 interceptions this year. Previous high in a season was 4. BYU is 6th in the country with 21 takeaways. So their defense is really, really good at forcing turnovers. BYU's pass defense has been pretty good, but Kansas doesn't pass the ball well. What Kansas wants to do is run the ball down your throat. Their offensive line is what does most of the work. They've actually only allowed 8 sacks, which is really good. And BYU only has 13 sacks on the year. So what I'm trying to say is that what Kansas wants to do is throw the ball. And if BYU can keep their foot on the gas the whole game and not let up, don't let this thing even get close, never let, Kansas can't run the ball if they're down 2 scores.
Right.
Never let the Jayhawks get the opportunity to do what they do well. Make them uncomfortable, and that's going to be a relatively easy win for the Cougs if they can do that.
Heard an interesting stat about this Kansas team earlier this week. And I think you kind of have it in here a little bit. They play close games. They have close scores. 5 of the 6 losses, as you mentioned, are 4 points or less. So if you reverse that, and if they would have came out on top on those games, they would be the number 1 team in the Big 12 right now.
They'd be 9-0.
They'd be the number 1 team in the Big 12.
Or tied with BYU as the number 1 team.
Probably tied with BYU.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, it's tough. I mean, sometimes you have teams, and it's weird how it's like a constant thing throughout the season. You'd think a 1-score game would be a 50-50 thing, but it seems like teams are one way or the other as far as how they come out of 1-score games. Again, this season, BYU seems to come out on top. Kansas seems to come out on the losing end. So that does give me some comfort as far as trends continuing. But then there's always, the regressing to the mean that has to happen eventually. So again, if I'm BYU, I don't even want to take the chance of allowing this to be a close game. I want the Cougs to come out fast. I want them to come out strong, and I don't want them to let up in the second half. Like we saw against Baylor, that got really scary. BYU dominated that game early, and Baylor came back and made it a contest in the 3rd and 4th quarter. So I'm worried for BYU's sake that if Kansas does that, if they come back in the second half and get some momentum like that Baylor team did, Kansas is better than Baylor, I think. Kansas has a better quarterback than Baylor, even though he struggled this year in Jalen Daniels. I think based off of their momentum, if it's a close game in the second half, Kansas is going to be dangerous. So again, key to BYU victory, keep your foot on the gas. Do not let up.
Yes.
You want to put up 45 points at least.
They have to play a complete game because, you bring up the Baylor game. They let their foot off the gas on that one a little bit, let Baylor get back into the game. But more so last week, I thought BYU struggled a bit in that first half against Utah.
Yeah, well, Utah made them uncomfortable. Of course, they didn't have Connor Pay. Connor Pay's back this week at center, so that's
Which
a big get for the Cougs. But
huge.
It was clear that Utah just wanted to kind of blitz the heck out of Jake Retzloff, and they were sending 6 guys almost every play, it seemed. Whether they were really blitzing that much or that's just a credit to Utah's defensive front, they were in the backfield. And I don't know if Kansas's defensive line has that ability to make Jake Retzloff and the Cougs that uncomfortable, but that's definitely why that offense struggled.
And so in this case, I don't want to see them come out of the gates struggling, right? I want them to come out and play and have a good first half, and I want them to have a good second half and continue to be good at moving the ball, continue to have that dominant defense that we've been excited about all season long, and keep, like you said, keep the pedal to the metal, keep their foot on the gas, and take it to Kansas early, because if you give Kansas any type of hope in this game, any type of confidence, that could come back and bite you later on.
And BYU's again, their passing defense has been really well. Their rushing defense isn't bad by any means, but they're sort of middle of the pack.
Yes.
And again, Kansas's rushing attack is one of the best in the conference. But, I mean, BYU has shown, just compared to the Kansas State game, that's what they do well, is rushing the football. And they did put up yards on the ground, but it didn't really affect the outcome of the game. So it's not so much the yardage total, but about, where they come from and letting that affect the scoreboard. So I'm not super worried about that, but again, just don't give them the chance to be comfortable. I don't want them to even take that chance.
Again, just come out of the gates, playing your game. Don't give them any type of hope or any type of confidence. I think there was a lot of hype around this Kansas team coming into the season, right? There was. Jalen Daniels had an incredible year last year. It does seem like he's taken a step back and regressed a little bit this year, but he's still dangerous, and he still can do some really good things. You got to contain Jalen Daniels on that offense to the best of your ability, and I think that's probably my key for this BYU game, for BYU to win this game.
Not letting Jalen Daniels get going.
Exactly. You contain Jalen Daniels and take away that run game, and I think you'll be fine.
These two teams met last year. It was BYU's first game in the Big 12. So that was huge. And Kansas won 38-27. Jalen Daniels, 14 of 19 for 130 yards, but 3 touchdowns. And Kansas ran for 221 yards on 37 carries in that game, but no touchdowns on the ground. That's a little interesting. But that was BYU's kind of welcome to the Big 12 moment. And it was a relatively close game. It's not like BYU got blown out by any means. But I think that's another underrated aspect as far as we've heard some sound throughout the week that some of these BYU players are playing with a chip on their shoulder. This is kind of a get-back game for the Cougars after last year's loss. Now the Cougars can come back and say, hey, we're atop this conference right now. We know what to expect from the Big 12. We know what to expect from you. You're nothing new to us anymore. You can't scare us. Plus, we're playing at our house.
And I think the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway from me last year in that game against Kansas, last season, was on BYU's first drive, it's a fumble return for a touchdown. It's the turnover. And then to start the second half, BYU throws in a pick six. And so that's what stands out to me from this last game. And I know we had this conversation earlier. As long as Retzlaff and this offense can protect the ball and continue to avoid turnovers, I thought they've been a lot better in recent weeks at holding the ball and making sure they don't turn over that ball. So I think that's going to be huge again tonight. You have to make sure that you secure the ball and make sure you win that turnover battle,
right?
And not give Kansas any of these opportunities. I know it wasn't Retzlaff last season. It was still Slovis, but you gave him the fumble early in the game. And then you give them the interception to start the second half. That's huge momentum that goes in Kansas' side, and I think that obviously plays a big factor into that loss last season. So secure the ball, win the turnover battle, and again, I think you have a big shot to get past this Kansas team.
Speaking of turnover battle, Shedeur Sanders just fumbled, couldn't handle the shotgun snap. It looked like it just kind of fell out of his hands. Guess what, Alex? Utah's defense recovers that. Oh, yeah, he called for the shotgun snap and kind of clamped his hands down before he had the ball in it. Bounced off his fingertips.
Recovered by Junior Tafuna.
Was that Junior?
That was Junior.
Got in there, got the ball, giving Utah's offense a short field again. Let's see if the Utes can capitalize. It is still 14-3 Colorado. But you're right. As much as we talk about BYU wanting to force takeaways against Kansas, protecting that ball is always key. Another thing I want to point to last year's game, BYU only had 9 rushing yards. Of course, Keaton Slovis is credited with 5 carries for -24. That's kind of sacks taken away there. But LJ Martin had 11 carries for 28 yards. Deion Smith had 4 carries for 10 yards.
It's kind of crazy to think that, this one, LJ Martin, I think, has taken a big step forward. He has looked incredible so far this year for the Cougars. But it's kind of crazy to think that last year they were held to just those 9 yards.
Well, their rushing attack was awful last year, so it's a huge testament to Coach Woods and that offensive line that have come in and kind of revitalized that ground game for the Cougs. And they did kind of get off to a slow start this season, but I mean, the last couple weeks especially, they have been on one. So you're right. I mean, different quarterback under center compared to last year for BYU. And Retzlaff definitely looks a lot better than Keaton Slovis did last year. So there are a lot of things that point to BYU should be able to take care of this one pretty comfortably as long as they don't let the Jayhawks get comfortable.
I will say that, I mean, obviously this is the third to last game. If BYU is able to beat Kansas and walks away with the win against Kansas tonight, I think I would be pretty comfortable saying that BYU will be playing in Arlington for the Big 12 championship. I know there's still what ifs and there's still possibilities, but with everybody else being at two losses except Colorado, BYU kind of has that ticket punched with a win tonight.
Yeah, I would agree.
It feels like it's in the bag for them, and they just have to continue doing what they're doing.
Looking for that 10th win on the season, that would be something. I mean, 9-0 is special, but you get that 10th win, and it's like, okay, getting a double-digit wins is always special, but 10 straight wins that's awesome. It's at home.
Does BYU finish this season with no losses?
It's going to take a lot. It honestly is, and I mean, they're going to be favorites in their last 3 games.
Absolutely.
And I am confident in them, but it's so hard to go undefeated, and I wouldn't be shocked if they lost a game. But if I were to pick the winner of their final 3 games, I'd go with BYU in every single one based off the matchups. To remind you, they've got Kansas tonight, at Arizona State next week, and then at home versus Houston. Arizona State could be a tricky one.
I was about to say, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that Arizona State game, that will be fun.
That
one's going to be fun considering where Arizona State is on the standings too.
Utah struggled at Arizona State, and I was just going to say Utah finished that drive off with a field goal after forcing the fumble recovery there. So that's 2 takeaways for Utah. That's only turned into 6 points. Again, Alex, Utes can't win this game with only field goals. 14-6, Colorado.
Yeah, again, just the inability to move the ball, man. The offense right now can't move the ball. And the defense, again, gives you this short field, and it looks like you have an opportunity to put 7 in, but Utah just can't seem to figure out how to punch it into the end zone.
Do you have a score prediction for BYU Kansas?
I'm going to go...
I think it's going to be high scoring.
Yes, I was just about to say. I think it will be high scoring. And I think, again, BYU have... I'm going to go 34 to 28, BYU.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if Kansas puts up that many. I'll say 24. Okay. I'll say 36-24 BYU. Another interesting point too, just while we're talking about this game, do you think coming off of a rivalry week game last week is going to impact BYU at all, positively or negatively?
I think it'll impact them positively.
Because they came out on top.
If Utah was able to steal a win from BYU, maybe we're having a different conversation. But I think
some momentum.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the fact that they came into Rice Eccles and they won in the fashion that they did, right? The game was over.
Yeah.
It seemed that Retzlaff was down on the 1 yard line. But for them to come back and, Chase Roberts makes a big catch to set up Will Ferrin for the game-winning field goal. To win that game in that fashion with that emotion, plus you have the fans out at 3 a.m. crowd surfing with Will Ferrin,
going crazy.
Like, yeah, it's going to be a positive impact due to the fact that it ended that way.
Yeah. We'll see. Emotional games can be really hard for a team to overcome, whether, it was a win or a loss. So we will see. Man, Shedeur is just running around, and he finds a receiver for the first down. That is phenomenal.
Utah's got to get to Shedeur, man.
They do. They have not really been able to.
They have not been able to yet, and if they want to keep this game close, they got to get to Shedeur. You can't allow them to just stand in the pocket like that for that much time, man.
All right, we got to take another quick break. Coming up on the other side, we'll hit 5 minutes of. We'll talk Utah Hockey Club. We'll talk NFL and a little bit more. Stay with us. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles. It's time for 5 minutes of. Alex, we've got a little bit of time to talk about a lot of different things. I want to start off with this. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. Did you see Shams' tweet? New NBA insider for ESPN?
Which one?
The NBA is in serious discussions on a new 4-team tournament format for the 2025 All-Star Game. Oh. What do you think about that?
I kind of like it.
Do you?
Actually. Only because I feel like in recent years, the All-Star Game has kind of lost a little bit of its flair and a little bit of its spark. So I'm open to trying something new for it to hopefully get some more attention on it. Because I do like honoring the guys who should be honored, right? There's guys who have incredible seasons who should be in the All-Star, who should play the All-Star, and be recognized in that way. However, like I said, it's just kind of lost its glam over the last couple years.
New 4-team tournament for the 2025 All-Star Game would consist of 3 teams of 8 All-Stars each and the winner of the Rising Stars game. Again, this is being discussed. Nothing is official. And I'm with you. I'm all for trying something new because it has not been working recently. As far as this, I don't think I'm the biggest fan because why would this make the players care more? And that's the biggest issue, right? Is the players don't care about playing in the All-Star Game. So why would changing it to a tournament make them play harder? Are they going to win something? Are they going to, even the NBA Cup, like who cares? It's cool. The players do get a $500,000 bonus if they win, but it's not like at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter, right? So I don't know. There's got to be some sort of benefit to make these players want to play. Otherwise, I don't care what you change. It's not going to make the product better.
Right. And that's something that they need to figure out that's something they just need to figure out with the All-Star Game. Like something to make the stakes a little bit more interesting. Put something on the line that's going to incentivize the guys and the players to put a little bit more care into these games.
Well, and if you're turning this thing into a tournament, then you're going to have 4 games that nobody cares about as opposed to just 1, and you're going to make it that much longer of a weekend.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's an interesting thought. Obviously, there's still a lot of details that we don't know, but pretty big breaking news there from Shams yesterday that the NBA is discussing this.
Like I said, I'm all for trying something new, and hopefully, having the ability to again just attract more interest to it, not only from the fan perspective, but also from a player perspective.
Yeah, they're kind of getting desperate. This All-Star Game has been really bad the last few years.
Yes.
So they're desperate to make a change.
And I think the same thing can be said for the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, all of these.
Yeah.
Same thing. Let's talk Hockey Club for a second. They lost to the Vegas Golden Knights last night. It really sucked, actually, because they were tied 2-2. Vegas scored with a minute and a half left. They went up 3-2, and then they scored again with 30 seconds left to put the nail in the coffin. But it was frustrating seeing Utah compete with these guys. One of the best teams in the NHL. This is a team, mind you, they lost to them in overtime a couple weeks ago or last week. And then they come to Salt Lake City, and the Utah Hockey Club is able to compete with this team, and then they allow 2 goals in the final 2 minutes of the game. And it's like, man, they're so close to putting it together. But so far throughout this season, they've really only had 1 or 2 games where they have a complete performance as far as offense and defense showing up on the same night. as far as last night, they got the 2 goals, and then they just struggled to score after that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway for me is from this one, from the hockey club, is you're up 2-0, and it seems like you're playing really good. You're playing really well, and then you just kind of I don't know if collapse in this case is necessarily the right word, but you do kind of collapse a little bit in that third period, and allow that comeback from the Golden Knights. And this isn't the first time we've seen a third period not go the way of the Utah Hockey Club, right? We look back at that. Was it the Sharks where they were up and then the Sharks
allowed the flurry of goals late?
Yeah, so I mean, I want to see this hockey club do better at holding those leads and not allowing yourself to kind of collapse a little bit in that third period.
I apologize because I really am spacing who said this last night, but there was a player on this team that said sometimes they kind of just give too much respect to the opponent, or they're like in awe, like, oh my gosh, it's the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, these guys are one of the best teams in the NHL and we're on the ice with them. And they kind of let that get to their heads and that affects them. So I think it's maybe just a confidence thing, is they need to realize, like, hey, we're all in the same league. Okay, I know these guys are good. They won the cup a couple of years ago, but I mean, we're all in the NHL. We all deserve to be here, and we have the ability, again, like we saw last night, like they were up on these guys. You just got to put it away. Colorado going up 21-6. Will Shepherd caught his second touchdown of the game. Not looking good for the Utes.
Not looking good.
Not looking good. Alex, let's talk NFL really quickly. Got some fun games tomorrow. Bills-Chiefs, obviously the big one. The Chiefs got away with one last week. They blocked the game-winning field goal against the Broncos. Oh, I forget Parker's a Chiefs fan.
He's over in the studio celebrating.
Come on. No, this is going to be a fun game, though.
Yes.
Dalton Kincaid, former Ute, is out. He will not be playing in this one, but
Amari Cooper looks to be back.
Amari Cooper will be back. He missed the last couple of weeks. This game is always fun when these two teams meet, so we'll see what happens there. Are there any other games that you're keeping an eye on?
Obviously, that is the big one of the week. As far as other games go, I'm looking at the Packers-Bears. That one is always fun. I know the Bears kind of struggling at the moment, right?
New offensive coordinator. We'll see if that makes a change or not.
But those ones are always fun. It's the rivalry game.
Yeah, they hate each other.
They do not like each other, and so that one always delivers. There's always something fun that's going on there. I know last year the Packers kind of blew out the Bears, but this is a different Bears team, and so we'll see kind of how that one goes. 49ers Seahawks, also another divisional game that I'm looking forward to watching tomorrow. And then, of course, the Monday night game, Texas Cowboys. That one will be a fun one to see kind of how the Texans bounce back. They've struggled with injuries. Nico Collins should be back.
Yeah.
And I think C.J. Stroud has struggled without his receivers. And so we'll see if the Texans are able to bounce back.
I also want to mention the Ravens at the Steelers. That's an 11 a.m. game. Again, AFC North rivalry matchup. And you know what, Alex? Lamar and the Ravens have historically struggled against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is rolling with Russell Wilson under center. So this could be a really fun game. It's a real brutal kind of smash mouth type of game. It's always going to be real physical. And then Bengals at the Chargers, Sunday Night Football. I think that's a fun matchup. Two of the best quarterbacks from that draft class in Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And the Chargers have really figured their stuff out the last, I'd say, month or so. And the Bengals have had good performances, but they haven't been able to translate that into wins. So I think that's going to be another fun one. I love Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert has looked a lot better under Harbaugh. Last year, I think there was a lot of people questioning if he had what it takes to be the franchise quarterback, to be the guy for the Chargers.
Yeah.
But I think this year he's looked a lot better. The Bengals, I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Bengals because
Jamar Chase had one of the most impressive performances you'll ever see last week, and they still weren't able to get it done.
Exactly. The offense, I think, is more than pulling their weight. I think defensively this team needs to figure things out.
They just can't get stops when they need it. And it's interesting because Trey Hendrickson, I think, leads the NFL in sacks. So it's not like they can't get pressure on the quarterback. It's just they cannot get stops when it's needed. So I think, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Again, I will always defend Justin Herbert. I could argue with the all segment about if Justin Herbert looked good last year or not. But anyways, what do you think of the Lions? 5 interceptions last week for Jared Goff, and they were able to get the win against those Houston Texans that you were talking about earlier. Do you think they're legit?
Well, I can't remember the last time a team threw 5 interceptions and walked away with the win. So, I mean, massive credit to the Lions for being able to pull that off. I do think, from what I've seen so far, I think the Lions are legit. I think they do have an opportunity to make a deep playoff run, which is kind of crazy to say and to think about after what the Lions have been most of our childhood. Right? They weren't a good football team. They were never a good football team. Now they are.
Yeah.
And so I'm extremely happy for the people of Detroit and for the Lions fans to be able to have a team who can potentially contend for something this season. I do think that they are legit. Goff, I think, just needs to clean it up a little bit.
I'll pose you with a question that I got asked yesterday. Who's your MVP so far this season? We're a little more than midway through.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I was asked specifically if Saquon Barkley would be MVP this year. He had an impressive performance Thursday night, almost 200 yards from scrimmage. My answer was that if Christian McCaffrey did not win MVP last year, I don't think a running back is going to win it anytime soon. I don't think that Saquon, I mean, he's had some big performances, but even people are already forgetting what Christian McCaffrey did last year. That was one of the most impressive seasons I've ever seen, and they gave it to Lamar Jackson. And Lamar, by the way, is playing even better this year than he was last year. So I think if the season were to end after this week, Lamar would repeat as MVP, and Offensive Player of the Year would either be Saquon or maybe Jamar Chase.
I'm right there with you. And what I've been kind of looking through this and looking at some of the numbers, and the only one that really, I am with you. I do think that a quarterback will ultimately win the MVP. I think right now the one that stands out the most to me is Lamar Jackson, and probably, I think Lamar Jackson. I'm right there with you. He's going to repeat. Right now, the MVP for me is the repeat of Jackson.
Yeah, or, I mean, the Chiefs are undefeated, and I know Patrick Mahomes has not been very impressive this year, but, I mean, an undefeated team is always going to get a lot of run when it comes to the awards races, especially when it's Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. First half has come to a close as Utah hits a field goal as time expires. That's Cole Becker's third field goal of the game. It was a 47-yarder. They trail. Was it 21-9?
21-9 as they head to the break.
21-9 at the half. We've got to take a break. We'll wrap this show up on the other side. And we will continue to kind of talk about what's happened, what's transpired through this Utah game in the first half. And then, of course, stay tuned. We're going to have the Utah post-game show as soon as the first half goes final. But I don't know, Alex. Before we hit the break, let's get some quick thoughts on this first half. I'd rather do it now than that last segment.
It's the same story, man. We're seeing the Utes struggle to move the ball. Good that I guess good that they've gotten points. They have the nine off the field goals, but you get that interception early, man. You set up your offense in fantastic field position, and you can't put it into the end zone. You get the fumble to Funa, and again, can't put it in the end zone. Utah really needs to figure out, one, how to get touchdowns. Their inability to not be able to get touchdowns has really impacted them here in the early goings against this Colorado side, and the inability to move the ball.
Simple. Not much to say. It's the same story we've seen. All right, halftime. We'll wrap the show up next. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It is the Saturday show, wrapping this thing up. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. We are in the middle of a game. Utah trails Colorado at the half, 21-9. Do you think the Utes can put it together in quarter number 3, Alex?
I hope so, but with what I've seen so far from this first half, it doesn't seem there's not much that really inspires confidence in this Utah team at the moment. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can come out, make it more competitive in that second half. But, you know, there's been a couple of passes where, I mean, there's one that sticks out of my mind in that second quarter where it looked like King, was wide open. There was nobody around him, and Wilson just kind of overthrew his target.
Isaac Wilson, 8 of 20 in the first half, 62 yards, 1 interception, so below 50% completion percentage.
8 of 20.
Did you realize it was that bad?
Wow. No, I didn't realize it was that.
Wish you could have seen Alex's face just now. Turned to a ghost for a second. Do you think that we're going to see Luke Batari in the second half?
I mean,
there were questions the last couple of days. Isaac Wilson has apparently been sick. It was unknown if he was going to play today. He started the first half for Utah. Do you think we will see Luke Batari lead the Utes to victory for the second straight year against Colorado?
And when you put it like that,
those are two different questions.
Yes,
yeah.
When you put it like that, no.
But do you think we'll see Batari at all?
It might be a possibility, man. Their 8 for 20 isn't good. 62 yards isn't good. Utah's inability to do really much on offense. They're under 90 yards here at the halftime break on offensive yards.
2 short fields, and they have only turned that into 6 points.
That's concerning. And so, I mean, again, if you're Kyle Whittingham and you want to spark and you just need something positive, something to hang your hat on, we could potentially see Luke Batari coming into this one.
We saw it against Houston, looking for a spark on offense.
But at the same time, like I said, at what point does this play time for Isaac become more of a detriment to his development more than anything?
Yeah, I wonder how much this game will affect his decision for his future. And I don't know anything. I'm just speculating, but we will see there. I just want to run through the rest of our schedule here on the Zone. Today, of course, we're going to have Utah post-game on the 97.5 signal. Once this game goes, final second half coming up soon. Coming up right at 12, though, right after this, we're going to have Utah State versus Hawaii. We're going to have the pregame show with Scotty G and Kevin White coming up right after this. Later tonight, we're going to have the Jazz at the Sacramento Kings, 8 p.m. tip-off, 7 p.m. pregame. That's going to be on 97.5. And then we're going to have the Cougar pregame show with Alex Carey and Jake Hatch at 7 as we get ready for that 8:15 kickoff tonight against Kansas.
Good slate. We have a good slate. A lot of good things happening. Hopefully the Jazz can continue the steam, pick up some wins, and we'll see how the Cougars do tonight.
All right. Thanks for making us part of your Saturday. Stay tuned for the best sports coverage. This has been the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.